our regular evening performance by the world famous Paul Preston.
Thank you, Larry. It's nice to be world famous. Of course, have you seen the target on my back? I know that when you get famous that things start to happen you don't expect. That's almost like a daily basis now. Okay, so what I'd like to do is open it up for some questions. I think that everybody's kind of curious about what's going on out there. And if you have any quick questions, I'll answer any questions. Yes, sir. Tom? My understanding was that, and he's talking about what happened in Yemen. Well, the question was, any lead on who told the Marines to dump their weapons as they left Yemen the other day? And my understanding is that, from my sources, and they've yet to be wrong, in the last 4 years that I've been in contact with them, this was a pre-arranged situation. They did not want to end up like Benghazi. So they just took off. Now, I'm trying to establish about who gave what orders, where, when, and how, because the people have told me that the president did not know about it. So, and the reason is that Al-Qaeda was showing up, and they had targets specifically on their backs from Al-Qaeda, and there was no support coming from Washington, and they knew that.
Well, is there one person to embarrass the Marines?
Well, I think they did the absolute right thing.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, they give up their gun.
Well, yeah, but you know, there's protocol. From what I understand, I'm not thinking that's a bad deal because there's protocols, as I understand it. When, of course, Jim back there could answer this better than I could. That when you have to abandon an embassy, the big concern that all my sources said was what did they leave behind, because they did leave in haste. They left in haste, but you know, they're not going to end up like Benghazi, and that's a reality that's out there in the field. So, which brings us to the Marines that are stranded, and I have not gotten any more information about the 325 Marines that are out at Al Abad, I believe it is, Air Base, and what's happening there. But it's a real possibility that ISIS is going to surround them and try to wipe them out. And they're not going to get much support. That's what my people are telling me from Washington. That ought to chill everybody out.
Is there anything we can do about it?
Well, is Nick still here or did he leave?
He left.
Okay. I'll answer it through this answer. I want to thank Nick, really. He did an absolutely outstanding job of laying out what happens locally with United Nations Agenda 21. How many of you caught the fact that that's what he was talking about? 100% of what he was talking about there was the local initiative for United Nations Agenda 21. But the thing that I got from Nick was the thing that I think is just totally outstanding. And really, I'm telling you, that it's you. It's the Tea Parties. The one thing that stands in their way right now is the Tea Party in the United States of America and affiliates outside of America. You're here, and you're the only group in opposition to Obama. And you're growing. Tea Parties around the nation are growing. And they're concerned about that, as so concerned that they have a conference and the Tea Party is being addressed because you're stopping them cold at the local level. Now this gets into Rosa Corey, Heather Goss, you know, all the things that were going on with ABAG and all that stuff. That's what's happening. It's at the local level. And the American Planning Association, direct arm to the United Nations. Direct. And all these little meetings that they're going to have, they're all Delphi meetings. They know what the outcome's going to be. They're just telling you what it's going to be. And way on down the line, it's taking away your property. But there's other things that are stopping them. And one of the things that's really stopping them cold is what happened with Fred Kelly Grant. How many have heard of what's going on there? Fred Kelly Grant suing CARB. Yeah, you're supposed to get what's called coordination authorization at the local level before the EPA does anything. Oh, well, they just forgot that step. So when you have a federal law that's over here and you want to impose it on a local community or something, then you have to work and coordinate the activities of that law with the local level. It's called getting coordination authorization from the local level. The EPA, by rule, does not do that, ever. They just dictate and foist on the local communities. You see what's going on there? That's called a dictatorship. That's dictatorship in action. And so what the thing is to get these people and say, oh, wait a minute, elected officials in here. Is Stan still here? Oh, listen, he knows when I get up to leave. That's okay, though. But one of the questions, ask your elected official. It can be an elected official who can be a school board member, a member of a water board, any locally elected official can invoke coordination. It's 2 simple letters to the local entity and to the feds. They have to invoke a process called coordination, authorization. And if they don't do that, they can be taken into court and everything overturned. Now, Fred Kelly Grant is a former federal prosecutor. He used to throw mafia guys in jail. He knows the bad boys, and he's more than happy to go after people. Trust me. That's why he's going after Mary Nichols from CARB. She's the one with the EPA that was doing experiments on children with diesel fumes.
But they care so much.
Yeah, right. That's yet to come out. Although, on the 26th of January, I talked about it on my radio show. In fact, I was so concerned. I spent 3 hours condemning CARB, the California Air Resources Board, and Mary Nichols, because they're absolutely lawless. There are no open meeting laws. Did you guys know that? They don't have to. They have no open meeting laws. They don't have to show their agendas, minutes, nothing. Who they pay, nothing. It's complete anarchy. It's complete communism. So I spent 3 hours. And yeah, I was speaking, well, I guess I wasn't very flattering, calling her a dictator and stuff like that. Nothing derogatory, nothing insightful. But 2 days later, I was taken off YouTube, banned. I was banned from YouTube. Isn't that awesome? You know, I was really surprised. And of course, it's interesting because I'm seeking a lawyer. Well, I've got a lawyer, basically. And we're going to approach this from a First Amendment issue with Google. Because you see, it's Google who owns YouTube. And they are denying me access to the internet by way of television. So, and I didn't say anything bad. Nothing bad. I mean, it really wasn't anything insightful or like we're going to go out and riot or anything like that. Nothing like that. It's just called, we're going to start following the law. It just so happens Mary Nichols is very good friends with the owners of Google. So reach out and touch someone. Anyway, and listen, I think it's hysterical because one of the things, and I've said this before, you probably heard me say this, all totalitarians are very thin-skinned, right? And Mary Nichols in particular is very thin-skinned. I had a great conversation yesterday with a person who actually knows Mary Nichols. And I explained the story, and they said, oh yeah, that's Mary. They knew about you. They shut you down. They took you off within 2 days. I said, yeah. And he said, well, that's the way she is. We're living in a dictatorship when this happens. But here I got some good news, is that they have never, in their existence as CARB, which goes back a long ways, ever had any kind of coordination authorization in anything they've done. So potentially, everything they've done for the last 20 years can be overturned. And they're being taken to court right now. Now, isn't that encouraging news? I mean, that's really good news. But the other, I want to get back to Nick's comment, though. And it gets into what Stephanie was asking. What can we do now? And the first thing I say now is be here. Attend meetings like this. Be out and about. And don't be afraid to tell the truth. Do not be intimidated. Because one of the first things they want to do is shut you down and shut you up. And if they can yell, scream, and humiliate, it's like the tinfoil hat thing. I was talking about this on the radio show today. I love my tinfoil hat. I'm proud of it. And you should be proud of yours too. How many of you have a tinfoil hat? Come on now, be figuratively. Well, let me put it this way. When I used to teach sciences, that's their problem. I was a science teacher. I know all about this Agenda 21 stuff. I used to teach my kids always to be inquisitive. Ask questions. Because a good scientist is always going to ask questions, right? And the last time I checked, we have a First Amendment and we're allowed to ask questions, right? Except if somebody labels you, right? And then what happens? Oh, I don't want to be one of those people with a tinfoil hat. I don't want to be one of those guys. Yes, you do. It's okay to wear a tinfoil hat. It's okay to think for yourself and question what's going on. And then it's even better to ask questions. I used to hate that as a teacher. Oh my God, the students are going to ask me questions. Took me a year to get over that. Put out all these things, and all of a sudden people start asking questions like, oh, I can't remember. I can't believe they even remembered I said that. What's that deal? But you know, that's what you need to do. I'm just sort of empowering you here. Go home tonight, seriously. This is so silly, but it's great. Get some aluminum foil and make yourself a tinfoil hat. You gotta see the one I have. It's huge. It's so big. It's wonderful. Now, once you get used to the feel of the tinfoil hat, and you start talking and you get out there, you realize you're telling the truth about just about any issues that you're curious about. Once you find the answer. How many of you know what an epiphany is? It's like that aha moment. It's when dots are connected, right? I say that all the time on the radio show. I used to play this game with the kids. You've heard me say this. The very first thing I ever used to do as a teacher, in the first period of each day with a new class, overhead projector up, it is covered up, turn on the light. Up the top of the screen, it said, connect the dots. Okay. So the kids would look at it and go, Mr. Preston needs a whack job. So I start talking about science, and I pull it down, and in this corner, there'd be a big black dot, and this one, I'll have to get the projector out and show you sometimes a big black dot. So we started hypothesizing about, how can you guys connect those dots? So we get about 35 different answers about how to connect the frickin' dots. And so finally, we just get in this discussion. So finally, the kids would say, well, Mr. Preston, how would you connect the dots? Well, I take the pen and go from this dot and go to this dot. I would take the easiest route to get to the dot. But what happens with people, to get to that dot, what do they have to do? Rationalize the process. Don't they? When things are staring you right in the face, and they're so obvious, don't deny it. President Barack Hussein Obama. Don't deny it. 21 Christians beheaded. Don't deny it. A pilot burned to death. Don't deny it. Get my drift? Now, all you hear on Fox News, by the way, just hysterical. The news industry just cannot do that about Obama. Have you noticed? They come up with a gazillion, right? It reminds me, this afternoon, I was listening on Sirius Radio, Fox News commentators, and they were saying everything they could, Bill O'Reilly, but that saying that, I'm not going to say he's a Muslim, but they want to say it so bad. Because once they say that, it reveals everything about the man, doesn't it? And the evidence is clear. He's been saying that all along. But no one's connecting the dots because they're too confused. But once those dots get connected, what's going to happen? Will it be too late? I don't think so. I think there's a bigger mass of people now who understand what's going on. They've been lied to by the media. Brian Williams, ring a bell? Brian Williams. I like Brian. I thought the world of Brian. I think Brian's a plant myself. Now, why would that be important that Brian Williams was a plant? I'm just throwing, this is my tinfoil hat on, full on. Why would Brian Williams be a plant? For what reason? What? Take attention away, that's a good one. The Obama distraction mode, what else?
Credibility to the incredible.
Credibility to the incredible, which leads to what? Disgrace and dishonor. And everything he has said over the last 10 years as a broadcaster is now in doubt, which means American media is completely in doubt, but it also means a legacy. Because one of the things that Brian Williams did, and did so well, was a lot of work for the History Channel. Go back and look at those History Channel shows. They're supposed to be here for 20 or 30 years. Now, my people have already told me that at NBC and the History Channel, they're going through all those specials and redoing them. They're taking out his segments. Because that's real history. And some of it's really pretty good stuff. It's a legacy that needs to be protected, but you can see, if he's a plant, that means that there's been a lot of planting for a lot of years. Now, my people agree with me. In fact, they put that bug in my ear. That he's a plant. And it makes perfect sense for me, if you understand. Tom?
Well, we know the History Channel always tells the truth, right?
Well, you know, there's Nick right there. Now we can really badmouth him. Well, you know, but here's the thing: is it will be around for a long time. And look at all the stuff that they have there, and what's going to be one of the biggest sources of information for a legacy and for history going forward, at least the next generation. We do know one thing, Thomas, that in the schools today, there's no history being taught. Former superintendent, 41 years in the system, I can say that. You catching something or you got a question? Yes, sir.
What's your take on this bit with the internet takeover?
Oh, well, they're trying to. Yeah, internet neutrality?
Yeah.
Yeah, we covered that last week. And they're absolutely trying desperately to take it over because, see, this is what they cannot control, is the news stream media. Us, me, you. Obama is going nuts. They're literally going crazy over this internet business. It's just craziness. Everybody's got an internet, everybody has an opinion, and then they're shooting down all these messages to one another in social media. Did you see the thing that he did, the commercial? Was it disgusting and vulgar? And of course it had to happen. What was her name? Kayla, is that her name? The same day that they announced that she had been killed. He did that commercial. The commercial that he did about the Affordable Care Act with him taking all the selfies, standing in front of the mirror, sticking out his tongue. If you notice the mirror, it's dirty. It's like somebody has spit all over the front of it. I had to throw that in there. But it was kind of sick that he did that on that day. See, that's what, you know, kind of leads you to believe this guy's got ulterior motives, obviously. Connect the dots. Just connect the dots. Yes, sir?
Well, with the internet, they've got a proven point with Arab Spring. Internet and social media and everything,
Right.
There's such a big play here, so they can't allow that here.
Well, it's happening here anyway, and it will continue to happen. But your point is very well taken, because it was, and they knew that the internet was going to do that, social media was going to do that. This is not a secret. We were talking about this in the early 90s. In fact, it was in France where they started to have problems with the early Muslim settlers with, they had computer terminals set up at various points where you can communicate. And they had some riots, and they figured out that at the time, in the rudimentary internet, they were using that to coordinate their activities.
Well, I know you got nothing else to do, but did you ever get a chance to check out a couple of years ago where they took the Freedom of Information Act off the FCC?
What do you mean?
Well, a couple of years ago, I don't know if it was online or...
Oh, they're trying to bring it back.
Okay, but...
Yeah, they're trying to bring it back.
Radio, television, why shouldn't we know what's going on radio, television because of the internet?
Well, the internet right now is pretty much free and open. And by the way, when he did that commercial the other day, what he was trying to do is get enough hits off of YouTube, and which he did. He got over 30 million hits after he did that commercial for the Affordable Care Act. So that's the attention that they're going to. That's the direction. That's the audience that they're going to. But with the Freedom of Information Act, are you mean the not the Freedom of Information, the Fairness Act?
Yeah.
The Fairness Act. Is that what you mean?
No, this is Freedom of Information Act where you couldn't go and get any information from the FCC. What's happening?
Oh, well, okay. Freedom of Information Act, all these government organizations have shut down, and they're saying no. They're just not compliant. They're lawless. And so you have Judicial Watch who's coming in and being successful. Now, here's an interesting one. I'm waiting for these. Because, who is it? Josh Earnest. You ever watched him? He's a press secretary for the president. Now, Josh Earnest. How serious can you take a guy by the name of Josh Earnest? Or Jay Carney? I mean, he sounds carnival characters. But it was Josh Earnest who has a collection of pictures of Obama during the Benghazi attack that day. Because, you know, they have a White House photographer who follows you around, right? So the question is, was he in... Did you tell me this? No, it was somebody else. The question is about the pictures. Was he in the home section, you know, where they live, or was he in Reggie Love's bedroom section? There's a question about that. Seriously. Okay. So we're getting it. It's okay. It's okay. Yes, ma'am.
Don't forget the John Birch Society. They've been around for a long, long time and they've done much to improve this country. So we need to get involved with that organization.
Listen, any organization that wants to get rid of this guy is fine with me. Except for the...
They've got lots of money and they've got the New American Magazine. And so I really thank the Lord for the John Birch Society, which is based, by the way, on a missionary to China that the communists killed.
Right, right. If you hear
If you're
the...
not familiar with the organization, get on the internet and learn all about John Birch.
Right, in history there, because he was the first Cold Warrior to die.
He was in the military, and the government covered it up in regards to his murder.
Yeah. The key thing out of all that, though, is get involved, stay involved, and don't take no for an answer. Do not be intimidated by those that are around you. Okay, I want to say one more thing, though, because we're short of time. And I know you want to rush out and listen to my radio show, because it is on 1410 a.m. right now. Happy hour at Applebee's. Larry is buying. You're all welcome. Okay. Interesting Face the Nation yesterday. Did anybody see it? It was with Bob Schieffer. And, well, it's interesting because Bob Schieffer, you know, he's old school. And who's it, Bob Simon? Is that who it was who died from 60 Minutes? Well, he's really old school. And he was in a terrible car accident. And then this reporter who is kind of an old school guy from the New York Times drops dead of a heart attack at 58. you know, I get real curious about these people who just suddenly start to drop dead, you know, because if they have any kind of criticism of Obama, they drop dead.
Like Breitbart.
Breitbart, Tom Clancy, he was one of them. But an interesting thing happened yesterday on Bob Schieffer's show, because it was Bob Schieffer who was doing this, and he was interviewing Dennis McDonough. By the way, there's only 703. I guess you can't see it. I'm real proud of this. Put this icon up there. Of course, I can't get it on here, but there's only 703 days left in Obama's term. Anyway, this is, I'm going to read this to you. It says, ISIS is committing and continuing to commit these heinous crimes. This is Bob Schieffer. You guys all know who he is, right? And it's a very, you need to see it. Go to my website, agenda21radio.com, and look at the YouTube and watch Bob Schieffer. ISIS is committing and continuing to commit these heinous crimes. 4 Americans have been killed, and Washington responds by saying, we need to have a debate. It's Bob Schieffer. Here's a dot. You go, Bob. Let's see if you can get to this one. How many of you would like to have been in my biology class? You would have all passed. You that didn't raise your hands, forget it. It says, now listen to this. Face the Nation host Bob Schieffer said, quote, there's a perception out there that we don't care that we're taking these things in stride, meaning all the attacks, the beheadings, and everything. To which Dennis McDonough, and I have come firmly to believe that every one of these people that are closely around Obama have been groomed to be there. Just, anyway. Obama's chief of staff, Dennis McDonough, took issue with Schieffer's appraisal. I work very closely with the President of the United States, and he takes very, very seriously what these accusations are, McDonough said. We've seen ISIS progress blunted in Iraq. We're making good progress in Syria. He's actually saying this. And you watch Schieffer's face. It's personal now. But I don't want to overstate it because this is going to be something that will take some time. Schieffer's, now this is the writer here, Schieffer's shifting attitude towards the president is reminiscent of an earlier time. Anybody know what I'm going to? Involving another CBS anchorman. As the 1968 presidential election season approached, then-President Lyndon Baines Johnson decided not to run for re-election. When an aide asked why, Johnson said, CBS News anchor Walter Cronkite was critical of his handling of the Vietnam War. Says, until then, Cronkite generally supported both Johnson and the Democratic Party. And his comment was, if you lost Cronkite, Johnson told his aide, you just lost. Now, how many of you remember that? If you were in Vietnam, you remember it. Or if you were sitting there waiting for the draft number, like I was, I remembered it. But that's a turning point. Bob Schieffer did that on purpose. And thank goodness he did it. Because they are waking up finally that they're being threatened themselves. The chickens are coming home to roost. And it could be on them. Now, another little side note is you have David Rhodes, who's president of CBS, and Ben Rhodes, who's the White House advisor, chief White House advisor to the president. That's their brothers, by the way, I forgot that part. So you see what that's going to be like around their household. Bob Schieffer went over the line. But he's on record, and I think it's a turning point. I really do. And I think that it's maybe late, too late, whatever. I think it's a good thing. But I'll tell you one thing that scares the daylights out of all these people. Every one of our enemies, I don't care if you're talking about China, because if you haven't gotten the drift, China is here to take our property. It's happening now. Oh, the drought thing. God. All right. I was all over Dane Wigington today. Remember him? Okay, the chemtrail guy. How many don't believe in chemtrails? Raise your hand. Come on. Come on. Don't, I know everybody here, all we need to do is look up at the sky. Well, guess what they did today? Guess what came out in the UK Mail today? Oh, a scientist in Washington was contacted by a CIA agent and asked the following. Do you think that any of these militaries around the world are changing the climate to hurt America? I about fell out of my chair. I couldn't believe it. I pulled it up on Drudge and I was on the air and I stopped. Dead air is never any good in radio, but I'm reading it. I'm going, what? You see what they're doing. How many of you noticed there weren't any chemtrails today? Did you see some? When did you see some?
About 10, 11 o'clock today.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it in the afternoon. I hermitage until 3 p.m. But there, something's up, and that's the signal. Something is up because Dane Wigington, 16 million hits on his website in just a little over a year. The word's getting out, and they're being called out. And they are worried because they know it's really kind of hard to cover this stuff up. And what about this man-made drought that we have here? Doesn't it seem a little strange that in California we have all these huge reservoir systems and they're being drained for fish? What? You know, I'm a biologist. Hello? It makes no sense other than if you want to get people off the land, which is what they're trying to do. That's why the Chinese are feverishly buying up land in California through Dianne Feinstein's husband, Richard Blum. Anyway, I'll take 2 more questions and I'm done. Any more? Okay, Tom.
Well, you remember a couple of months ago, I was over at the gym in the pool, and I looked up, and I mean, the whole sky, there was 2 tankers. I mean, every which way you could possibly see, as far as you could see was chemicals.
Yeah, Tom Burns sent me some great pictures. Was it last Monday? Week ago Monday? I mean, you know, somebody, man, it was amazing. It was a grid type pattern over Gridley. I'm serious. I thought that grid-like pattern over Gridley. Brett?
Friday morning, there was a circle right over Yuba City. I got pictures of it right here. I took it just a few days ago, and it's just a tight circle of the. I've got it. I'll show you the picture. There's several pictures, and they're coming down by the mall. You can see the mall, and you see a circle, tight circle of the chemicals.
You know, I think he's got a tinfoil hat. What do you think? I love these tinfoil hat things. Okay, anyway, I think I'm going to close it out there, but I do want to say a couple of things. One, we have some tough times ahead of us. And if you really pay attention to the news and listen to Agenda 21 Radio, I'll try and keep you up on everything. There's strategies going on. We are defeating them in many ways. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Some things are happening, though, that we're going to have to get our arms around. And I support wholeheartedly have a gun or guns available to you. Because, you know, the one thing that they do fear is the millions of guns that they face. And they know that, and they can't stop it. Like I say on the radio, and I tell you guys all the time, when they challenged our Second Amendment right, what did we as Americans do? We went out and bought more guns and more ammo. And when they challenged our First Amendment right, which includes freedom of speech and the press, oh, and religion, did I forget about religion? Oh, I'm sorry. It's absolutely okay to condemn a religion if it's cutting your heads off. I just want to tell the ministers, priests, and so on, it's okay to talk about that. And don't be intimidated by the government. How many in your church went to church on Sunday and was sort of given a brief about Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act? That didn't happen to me, I don't around here. It just did that. But, you know, what happened when they challenged the First Amendment? Internet activity went sky high. Blogs went sky high, through the roof. New websites, there's so many websites out there, it's absolutely mind-boggling, and all are conservative. So we talk about shutting down the internet. That's why they want to shut down the internet. Because now people, especially your younger kids, they're getting all their news and information, 70% of it, off the internet. They're not listening to the mainstream media, which is a good thing. Of course, I listen to it only for humor at this point. MSNBC, God. Anyway, Al Sharpton. What is that? Rachel Maddow. I'm sorry, I have more fun than I should have, I guess. Okay, anyway, anything else? Oh, yes. Okay, one more announcement. Thank you very much.